regular Board of Directors meeting for the El Paso Central Appraisal District. And let's call roll. Paul Garcia will be late.
Yes, ma'am.
Freddie, help me with your...
Lyell.
Clyel Avalos. Obviously,
Got it.
you're here.
You got it. I'm here.
Ronald Blowenfield.
Present.
Catherine Lucero.
Present.
Eduardo Mena.
Present.
Mena.
Mena.
Vincent Pettis.
Present.
Laurie Searles here. Chuck Taylor.
Chuck Taylor here.
And Sam Trimble.
Present.
Okay, we're all here. And that would take us to the pledge to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. And as our agenda goes, that would bring us to public comment. Is there anyone signed
Madam
up?
Chairman, there's no one signed up for public comment.
That's good. I must be doing something right. That would take us to agenda item number 2, approval and signing of the minutes from October the 17th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? Motion made by Mr. Lowenfield, seconded by Mr. Taylor to approve the minutes from October the 17th, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Number 3, discussion and possible action of our long-term disability, accidental death, and dismemberment life insurance group plans. And that will be presented by Michael Davis. Dennis. Good evening, Mr. Dennis. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Dennis. I am the insurance broker for El Paso Central Appraisal District. Today we are going to have some fun and discuss long-term disability and group life insurance. Effective January 1, the current carrier, Unum, they are increasing the annual premium of the long-term disability and life insurance from approximately $28,000 to $32,000 per year. We went out to the insurance benefits market and we shopped around. We received 7 proposals. 9 declined. And in the 7 proposals, there were 1 proposal that was pretty outstanding in my eyes. And it's with One America. The benefits that they have quoted were exactly the same as the current benefits. So nothing is changing. However, their rates are about $4,000 lower than the renewal. $200 and maybe $20 annual increase from the current rate, which is fantastic. On the second page of the spreadsheet, there is another quote from Mutual of Omaha. Their rates are $230 or $220 lower than the One America quote. However, the Mutual of Omaha's quote is only a 2-year rate guarantee, while One America's quote is a 3-year rate guarantee. So my recommendation is to change the disability and life insurance carrier from Unum to One America with a 3-year rate guarantee. Any questions?
Is there any reasoning for the increase from Unum?
Well, usually the carriers that's been here, if there are some claims that comes through, they tend to increase the rates to recoup the premiums that they, claims that they have lost.
In the request for, I guess, proposals or whenever you sent this out, was there a stipulation for a number of years to be in a contract, or they just are the first one did it on their own? The one you're recommending?
For long-term disability and life insurance, they tend to put that on themselves and provide us a 2-year or 3-year rate guarantee. The general consensus is about a 2-year rate guarantee, but One America was generous enough to give us a 3-year rate guarantee.
I have a question.
Yes,
What's the solvency on One America and the Mutual of Omaha, and how much more will our employees be paying?
Employees do not pay for the premiums. It's the district paid program.
Oh,
It's part of our
Okay.
self-insured benefit
Okay.
for the employees.
Yes.
And it is an A-rated company. The benefits are the same as what we currently have. We've had this since we've had healthcare. It's something we've always had. Another one of our benefits to the employees, our benefit package. This company, One America, I did ask where they stand with Mutual of Omaha and with Unum, and they are an A-rated company and are a very highly recommended company.
thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why the 7 companies dropped out?
Well, a lot of the times when the incumbent carrier, they think that they are competitive, they tend to not quote or decline to quote. It's not like health insurance fully insured program where the law forces them to provide a quotation. For something like long-term disability or group life insurance, they don't have to do that. If they feel like they're not competitive or won't be competitive, they do not have to provide a proposal.
Any other questions? I do have a question. Ms. Kilgore, I'm going to take a guess you have an insurance committee and they looked at it and everybody was happy?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments?
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
Again, regarding backup, if the sooner this can be provided to the board, the better. I noticed that this item wasn't on backup in the agenda.
Right. We were still trying to give everybody an opportunity to give a quote. So we just got with Mr. Dennis yesterday to get this. So we will work more diligently with Mr. Dennis to get this earlier. Thank you, Mr. Pettis.
So with that, do we have a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve the recommended carrier, One America.
Second.
Who seconded it? Thank you, Mr. Mena. The motion was made, and no more comment, by Commissioner Pettis, seconded by Mr. Mena. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
That would take us to number 4, discussion and possible action regarding the chief appraiser contract.
I believe everybody received the contract. For those of you that are new members, my evaluation back in January and February, at the time of the evaluation, the board was aware that the contract, I have a 3-year contract, and it expires at the end of this year, 2019, December 31st. But the board had said, you know what, let's wait till we get to the end of the year to renew the contract. The stipulation for me on the renewing of the contract was to not ask for a raise because they gave me a raise due to my evaluation. I had a very decent evaluation. So I had told them that no, in the contract renewal, I would not be looking at a raise. What I'd be looking at would be the benefits on the car allowance. The car allowance is the same it's been for 15 years at $6,000 a year. And a car allowance is I use my car to go to Austin. I use my car to go to Midland. So I am using my vehicle for business and to go visit all of the entities, of course. So we did do a survey at the time we did the salary survey, and they're anywhere from 10,000 up to 11,000 a year on other districts. I'm asking for 10. I do have an expense account that I utilize to do things for the staff. We do dinners for the staff. I give out acknowledgement gift cards to the staff, and that's at $2,400. And when we looked at that, they go all the way up to about 10,000. So I'm only asking for 5,000. It's not a make it or break it in the contract. Basically, the renewal for the contractors for the next 3 years. So it'll be from January 1 of 2020 to December 31st of 2. Yeah. So, and you all have the contract. It's a very basic contract.
Are there any questions of myself or Ms. Kilgore? Sure.
You're in the contract I'm seeing is still showing $6,000 vehicle allowance, $2,400 expense
I
allowance.
left it at that so that it could be a discussion.
Oh, okay.
When I sent it to the board members, I left it at, but this is my current contract right now.
Okay.
Other than changing the dates, and then, of course, because of the evaluation, we amended it to include.
Yeah.
So I left it there so that there could be discussion and whatever the board action wants to be.
So you're asking maybe for us to consider to increase the vehicle allowance to 10 and the expense account to 5.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And my evaluation is normally in January. We'll be sending out packets to all the board members with all the folks that we've gone to talk to and the accomplishments for the year. This is just a carryover from when we did the evaluation in February of 2019, because the board said, let's wait till we get to the end of the year, since I still had to the end of the year.
I think it's important for the new board members to know Ms. Kilgore got a shining evaluation.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One of my biggest concerns is the 3-year term on this. I think one of the biggest responsibilities as the board is to hire and fire the chief appraiser, and we have 4. I think this might be their first meeting for most of them, second meeting for one of them. So for us to be making a 3-year commitment with four members of the board that have no idea really how this operates or personally how it's done. I think we're on 2-year terms, right? But we are. Like we might be gone in 2 years anyway. So for us to be making a commitment for the next folks also seems concerning to me. Although I do think that this is standard. I understand a 3-year term is fairly standard, but just would like to voice that as a concern. And if there's any further discussion on that, I'd be happy to chime in. But if possible, a 1-year term I would like to consider.
I think the reasoning, and maybe I shouldn't speak for Ms. Kilgore, but just school board members will understand this possibly better, that the reasoning is the continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And that though the board members may change, may differ, that there's the stability at the administration level, that it stays, a solid piece. And I know my superintendent has a 5-year contract, and I understand your issues because I wasn't really ready to do 5 years, but he was doing an excellent job. The continuity was important, and you see the benefit and the value to that, because boards do change and their thoughts change. But if we're only here once a month, and as board members from our school districts, once or twice a month. So I think that's, because I understand where you're coming from. I have a very hard time with that with superintendents. I've been on the board for 20 years. I've been through several of them. But in the long run, I believe that's the purposeful meaning behind it.
And that
That
is
helped.
true to have the continuity with the staff. And there are things that happen throughout a 3-year time period. We do a revaluations. We have a MAPS review. That is every other year. We have the property value study. MAPS review is a methods and procedures review by the state comptrollers that comes in and looks at all of our procedures from the time a property owner walks in the door to all the way up to the board of directors. There's a property value study that is every other year that does the stratification of values in appraisal district to make sure we're meeting the state code. So those things are kind of alternate. So having the continuity with the staff and to be able to do those reports, because they may say the report is for 2019, but it actually starts the process in 2018. So there's something always going on. And so that's why the board had gone with the 3-year term for that continuity, for the staff and for the things that are the deadlines that we have with the state comptrollers. And there is language in the contract that
Yes,
if
I saw
you
that.
are not liking what I'm doing, there can be There is language in there that protects a board from having a chief appraiser that's not doing their job.
That's under number 3.
And if there, like where a superintendent has a payout, or, you know, if a contract ends with a superintendent, you have to pay them out, or with, that's not this way. There's no payout, there's no to the end of your contract. So if something did
Well,
come
that's a
up where you
major
felt like I
difference.
wasn't doing a job, that could be acted on.
I understand the benefits of it. I just think it's a challenge for a lot of people. If this is literally their first meeting, and I mean, if they're representing to have a fair, this is probably the most important thing that we do, from my understanding.
is.
And for them to be making a judgment for the next 3 years at their first meeting seems.
Maybe if I
Makes
could
sense
make a suggestion, maybe because you guys are serving a 2-year term, maybe we do a 2-year with a 1-year option that I come back to you in 2 years. That, because you are serving a 2-year term, so I'll serve the same term as this board, the same 2 years, and then we'll have that option for either 1-year option or 2-year option for the next term. I think that might, Mr. Lowenfeld, I think that might ease your comments on that. I'd be on here the same years you would be as board members.
Yeah, I think it helps a little. It still is. I'm not opposed to a 3-year term because of the benefits that are associated with it, as long as all the members are informed and representing their jurisdiction well and fairly. And so that's why I would like it. And I know that we need a new one. I know we can't push this off. You know, I know
Yeah.
we have to do it
You know,
today. So it's not.
I have maybe a thought that the new board members, maybe I'm Pollyanna, I don't know, but that they would trust the old board members in the evaluation that was given, and possibly even our taxpayer liaison who tells us all the wonderful shining reports we always get, that might be enough to, trust in saying 3 years for
I
continuity.
hear what you're saying, but when it comes to what Ronnie's saying, I mean, trust is one thing, but for the biggest decision that you make as a member of a board to be within 10 minutes of sitting down at your very first board meeting is a little misguided.
If I may, so besides coming here protesting my hefty tax bill every year, I actually have some intimate knowledge of here of how this place works. At one point, I was appointed to the ARB, but I wasn't able to serve due to a time commitment. But I'm intimately aware of the inner workings, and I have attended I think I was here for about 6 hours with Tracy during the Neighborhood Leadership Academy, where we went over everything that this board does. So although you are correct, I probably should not make any decisions right now. I certainly understand the decision that is being made and how it's being weighed. And that's just because
Do you feel comfortable?
I would, but I'm not going to speak for the new
Yes,
people.
but you personally
I
would?
personally.
Okay, that's very nice, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I agree. I mean, I was opposed to the contract in its current form due to the 3-year term, because it does create timing issues, and there is a lot of turnover on this board, probably more so than any other board that I've served on. But I would be open to a 2-year contract with a 1-year extension, at least, so that way the board members who were currently appointed or newly appointed do serve that 2-year term, and the contract would be reviewed by the same board members, with that term.
I believe that's a fair compromise.
I as well.
Everybody feels comfortable with
a 2-year.
2 year
Ms.
with the one-
Kilgore? Can you feel, I guess you can, you were,
With a 2-year with a 1-year extension, I mean, the whole goal is to try to do a 3-year cycle, but with the board being so many new members, I have no problem with a 2-year than with a 1-year renewal, and then at that time
okay.
I do want to say, just sitting here listening to the conversation as a new board member,
Yes, ma'am.
second meeting, I appreciate the efforts from our veteran board members who have the experience of coming to meetings for the past few years. It almost gives the impression that that we need to think this more thoroughly. Are there other concerns that you feel need to be brought to the table?
We've received the letters, and it's kind of the general stuff that we get that Ms. Kilgore needs to respond to and presents to us. Some I think are legitimate, some are not. I know the city's perspective is not happy. And some of that is, in my opinion, we've had these discussions a lot based on the commercial properties from the city's perspective not pulling the weight because the appraisals are too low or whatever, the difference between the residential and commercial, and the argument on the flip side being we need to draw more businesses to the city, and obviously the commercial tax base will increase by itself. So I don't know that there's a conclusion to that discussion yet, but that would be the primary concern that I would be bringing to the board on behalf of the city.
And was that something that was considered during the evaluation?
No, the board of directors cannot get involved in the valuation
Okay.
process. And just to let you know, I was going to, in the director's report, I was going to let you know, I do have Mr. Longoria coming in January. We're waiting until the end to the new board were appointed officially to do a training on what board members can and cannot do. You've gotten your packets, but we are going to do a training for y'all.
Valuation or evaluation?
Evaluation of Ms. Kilgore.
Yeah, she was saying your evaluation.
Oh, my
not
evaluation? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I did receive it.
And I think just to follow up on that, again, the perspective from the city is, and I don't know, you know, and we've talked about this when we were at the conference in Austin, discussing this with various board members from, you know, every appraisal district in the state at one point or another, that everyone has the same battles. But I know the city's perspective is that just recognizing that everyone else has the same battles when it comes to the commercial, manufacturing, industrial sector is not good enough anymore to just say everybody has this problem. And so I think finding ways to really figure out how to
Be innovative.
Well, and that's going to be more
Be-
legislatively.
right.
Yeah, I think
well,
that's.
it is, but you know, we sat here for several hours a few months ago when we had issues because of the timeliness of things, and then, you know, everyone's getting calls about that, not just from the city and the county and the press and everything, because of different things that were done in time constraints that were put on things that maybe shouldn't have been, and things like that. And so at the end of the day, again, in a broad general sense, it is that, you know, maybe there is some type of innovation or something to where we don't just keep saying, well, everybody has this problem with commercial. Everyone has this problem. Everyone has this problem. When you see the flux downward or upward that is making front page news on a regular basis. And so,
And unfortunately, we agree with you. When we start out our protest season, and we start out with our ratio studies, we are as close to market as possible. We're at the ratios throughout the protest season, and the hearings that happen. Valuations are adjusted because they're allowed. Property owners are allowed to file a protest, and they come in before either informally or formally with the appraisal review board, which that one's required. And they have a hearing, then the majority of the large commercial properties will file a lawsuit because they get another bite at the apple, even if they got an adjustment downward. So then you have lawsuits that we have to deal with. Right now we have about 281 arbitrations and close to 300 lawsuits just for the year 2019. So those are things that we do deal with on the valuation process. So, and that's one of the things we're trying to work with legislation to see what can we do to help the entities by not having these massive amounts of values under litigation. Unfortunately, legislation comes in and makes it even harder for us.
I think just to speak to that, the issue, and we discussed this when we were sitting here having that conversation a few months ago, I think the issue wasn't necessarily that anything was done wrong or that there were incurable issues. The problem was communication. And so when all of a sudden an entity who has a budget to meet gets a number and they're just blown away by the loss year over year in their eyes, it's not that there's anything you could do to control that. It's that the conversation that should have been had prior to whatever was delivered didn't necessarily happen that
But
time.
Right, and
Mr. Trimble, I have to tell you, as being the entity, representative of 4 entities that lost the most, probably ever, our loss was huge to the outlet mall. And we were informed all along the way. we actually set aside money each step of the way because we knew it was coming, because they told us this is what's happening. And for the board members, school board members, I want you all to understand too, James Garavilla, do you know who he is? He's the TASB board president for the state. He wrote a really, I'm so sorry I left it at home tonight. I was kind of in a rush and then I didn't bring it. I meant to bring it and ask to make copies for all of you. I can have it copies sent. He wrote a letter in the September Lone Star magazine. Do you know which one I mean, the TASB edition? First page in there. And it addresses this, that what we're hearing from the city, and I don't mean to cancel you two out any, but what we're hearing from the city is a problem throughout the state. And it's the equity issue. And there's only one way. Ms. Kilgore isn't going to fix it. The legislature will fix it. And the only way they will fix it is by our voices being united, standing, and as board members sending our delegates each year to stand for this, because we're the ones that are losing. We really are. And he gives it down to the dime how much we've lost and continue to lose if we don't become advocates on this. It's not something she's going to be able to do. So,
Well, and if I can get back to the contract, we do visit with all the entities, and so we are tightening up our visitations with the entities, being a little more closer. What we deal is we normally deal with the financial folks when it comes to the totals. And so we're going to be giving them more reports. As it is, we give them several reports throughout the summer. We visit with them before the preliminary roll goes out. Then we give them updates, and then we visit with them after the certifieds, where we're going to include a couple more visits with them and do some other numbers. David Stone and I have talked with them. We're going to run some other reports for them going forward. So we had some really good conversations with them this past summer, on some of the things that we can do and give them more information sooner. So that you'll see that changing going into
And the
2020.
reason why I think that's important is if you read any of the articles from the paper or watched anything on television, it literally looked like this. The appraisal district was communicating with the city via TV. Like, it looked like there was a statement coming from here, and then there was a statement coming from the city, and they were so far off base with one another that it looked, to the public at least,
Yeah.
like,
And we
do
really
these
weren't-
people even
yeah.
speak? And
Right.
so I think that's the thing, and that was something that we talked about in the evaluation.
And
but,
we did, and that's one of the things we're going to correct. But we were in communication with the financial departments,
Right.
and they didn't lose money. I mean, the money, there was just a misunderstanding of how the totals looked. There was no money lost. It's just being reported differently, but the money is there.
So
The
again,
value
it
was
was
there.
a communication thing. It
Yes,
wasn't a.
yeah,
And
we
then
are
when you say
changing
you
that.
speak with the financial, Robert Cortinas, the chief financial officer of the city, was the one being quoted that obviously had not been spoken to in a way that at least everyone was on the same page. And so I think from the city's perspective, that's to me, it's a communication thing. It's not an error thing.
Right.
It was a time
is a
thing and a
communication,
communication thing.
And
So
we have
I appreciate the
visited with
attention that
everybody.
you all have been giving to that. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, we've visited with them already on some changes that we're doing for going into 2020 on the communication on the totals. With the city, with the county, the schools were okay. They had gotten all the information and they understood everything, but there was some miscommunication between the city and the county. So we've already visited with Mr. Cortinas, Mr. Hargrove, that we're making some changes on what we're doing with them.
For the sake of best practices, can we postpone this item until the new board members have been trained, at least until January? And if we did postpone, what would the implications of that postponing be?
And that's when your evaluation will be as well?
Yes, but the contract ends this year, the December
Since
31st.
December 31st.
Yes.
and we don't have a December.
And the board had asked, the board prior to y'all had asked for it to be at this meeting and be done before the end of the year. So I'm following board action from back in February, board
If we can
requests.
do a continued contract for the next 2 months, can we propose that? To continue on the current contract for the next 2 months while we review,
I
when we have our next board
can't
meeting?
totally answer that, and I'm looking in the audience. I don't see
Training?
legal.
Well, what type of training do we get?
You'll get training here in this boardroom with the attorney from Houston, and it's not going to be on her contract. It's going to be on the duties of board members. And it will be about, is it 2 hours?
About 2 hours. We normally have it in February. I've asked them to see if they can schedule it in January because we do have so many new members to visit with the members on what you can and cannot do. Board members cannot get into the evaluation process, but we do go to the board in executive session on any of our major lawsuits where we're possibly going to trial on, to visit with the board members as to their direction. You hire and fire the chief appraiser, you hire and fire the liaison officer, you evaluate the chief appraiser and you evaluate the liaison officer, you approve a reappraisal plan, and that's pretty much it. Any large contracts. The budget, of course, yeah, the budget is a big one, and then our reappraisal plan that has to be approved every other year. This is
It'll
a very
also
standard
Open
contract.
Meetings Act,
yeah.
you know, the things you got as a school board member too.
Right.
That will be discussed.
This is my standard contract. It's, very simple, very easy. There's language in here.
And
you
yes,
can-
there is. That I see as the, if y'all are comfortable doing the 2-1, if you look and refer to, I think I just see it.
Out of curiosity, I'm wondering, just so we can defer, and really, I mean, Mr. Pettis and Mr. Taylor have anything to add to what Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Lowenfield have already said, just so that the new board members are
Do you have any
aware of what the
comments?
older board members
about-
are thinking.
No, I think so. So much of the stuff that we're talking about, was being talked about, is obvious, and maybe this obvious stuff needs to be written out. After a discussion, didn't you mention the discussion that will be coming by an attorney, right?
When, in the training,
Yeah,
Mr.
in the
Taylor.
training,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with the contract.
But
would
not
you,
to do
would you
with the
vote for the new contract today, Mr. Taylor?
What Mr. Avalos is asking you is, would you vote for this contract today?
Everything that's in this contract now, I'm very familiar with.
And would you vote to extend her
Yes,
contract today?
Yes, I would, because I have a year experience.
Yes, sir.
But the new members do not have that. But so it's obvious, at least it should be, that they don't vote on the contract. But now there could be a condition subsequent to this where certain things are spelled out. For instance, a person with any administrative experience about the fact that the executive director is furnished an automobile. You see what I mean? They might have input on that. See, so certain items
So,
should be always available to be voted on, rather you were new or old. But then there are other items like with reference to salary and stuff that should not be. So it could be written out as maybe an appendix or something, or understood. And to me, it's understood.
and so you would be comfortable this evening
Yes.
voting for renewing her contract?
Why, of course, because I have at least the longevity, I think, to do that.
I mean, if I don't see any harm, if waiting until January to give the board members an opportunity. I mean, it is informative knowing the full scope and authority of the board, and I think it at least gives the new board members an opportunity to perhaps ask questions that they may not have now, regarding the contract. If it's postponed until January, I would just imagine it goes into an evergreen clause for a month. I don't see any harm, and it's not going to affect the terms of the contract.
More than likely be postponed to February because January would be the training.
Right.
So I don't know if you'd want to do the training, because the training is about a 2-hour training, and then discuss the contract. It'd be a very long night.
Right.
So we would do the contract in.
Oh, that's nothing compared to some of the nights we've had, and if it meant getting it done at that
Yeah.
point, I would have no issue
Okay.
having a long meeting in January to make sure that it's
Okay.
taken care of.
But I think it's
that's
a-
being fair to you too, because we want to make decisions that are responsible and thoughtful as well.
Well, I was going to say in the director's report, but I'll go ahead and say it now. I have been elected on the International Association of Assessing Officers. It is an international organization. I'm on one of 14 board members. I will start a 3-year term January 1st.
So the fans paid off.
So the fans paid off. Yeah, my fans.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And this was my peers in the profession that have voted me in. So
We do have legal.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
see you.
she's here, yeah.
You're usually over there. I'm sorry.
So anyway, I'll tell you again during the director's report. Just to make clear, because Ms. Kilgore's current contract ends at the end of this year, she would need at a minimum an extension until the board votes on a renewal of her contract. So today's action, because there is an agenda item to review and for a review and possible action of her employment contract, you can't leave her without.
Yes, just
you can't
empty.
leave the appraisal district without an executive director, which is what would happen at the end of the year if she's without a contract. So the board would need to extend her current contract for the 2 or 3 month period.
Can we do a 3-month extension? 90 days?
It sounds like it. I don't, and please, I do not mean any disrespect to anyone, but I'm not totally sure that anybody's going to know any more in 3 months than they know right now.
But we learned a lot just in listening in this one
yeah.
meeting, so I think it's important to be a little
But
more
it's whatever, that was my next. It's whatever y'all are comfortable with.
Under the scrutiny that this organization and board is under on a regular basis, publicly and professionally, to make a decision where a near majority almost of a board, it's their first meeting, is opening us up to a situation where people are wondering how and why decisions are being made. So if we can extend to give security through that meeting and then make what would be a more educated decision at that point, I would probably move that we do that.
If I may make one
Yes,
more
ma'am.
comment. It is against state law to not renew a chief appraiser's contract or give the chief appraiser a raise based on value issues. So just FYI, there is a law in there that says you can't base anything on the values. You can base it on the processes and the procedures and what's being done, but you can't say the values are not high enough, so we're not going to do this. Yeah, that is against state code.
See, no,
Just
and
FYI.
I think, I mean, see, even more the reason to wait for the training purposes. I mean, those of us that are on the board, I think, know that very well. And I think the issues that were raised were more of an issue of communication. And again, speaking for the county, the issues that happened with the final certification and the differences in valuation from the second certification to the final certification was the biggest deviation that we've ever seen. And it significantly eroded trust between 2 of the largest taxing entities, and so it's not necessarily a valuation issue as much as it is a communication issue. But exactly, I mean, but they need to know. I think everybody needs to be very clear on the intricacies that we're not.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not basing that on, when I raise issues on backup. I mean, it's almost like I feel like I do at every meeting that if there's not backup for an item, it shouldn't be posted. These are issues of communication that I think need to be ironed out, but I don't see anything wrong with giving the new board members the opportunity to understand those intricacies regarding valuation versus
Versus
Yeah,
duties. Yes, sir.
And if that statement is directed at myself and Mr. Lowenfield, I want to make 100% clear that this is a methodological difference that we've had. That not only we had, but every media outlet in town had, and every entity that was educated on the process had. And so that has nothing to do.
No, I was just for the
specific-
new members. I wanted them
understand,
to
but,
be aware.
I mean, it's kind of a leading comment, and I, for one, don't really appreciate it, and I'm assuming Mr.
No.
Lowenfield doesn't either.
I did not mean it for that purpose, Mr. Trimble. I was just trying to let the
Well,
new
he had
people
just
know.
mentioned valuations, and so had I, but I mean, when it comes to methodology and communication, Google the articles and you can read what it was about. And there were literally entities making comments, including this one, that sounded like they'd never met one another. And that to me shows that there is a large gap in communication. And from the city's perspective, that is a serious problem.
And see, and I'm going to take issue on my end of it. We did communicate with everybody. We always communicate with everybody. We visit with the financial group twice a year. We're constantly sending them reports. There was no loss in value. There was a change in the methodology because of the loss that a specific school district, in particular, one of the largest, said, what can you do to help us? And the other school district said, what can you do to help us? Because we're losing money between the time we certify and the end of the year because of the lawsuits. So we did come up with a different methodology, and we did present it to certain factors. Not everybody understood it, and you're exactly right. That communication that we've since visited with them, we've changed some of the processes and on how we're communicating because they weren't quite sure what it meant. The financial people knew the money is there. The money is there. It's like a windfall. The money is there. The others didn't quite understand it. So we've changed that process, and I thank you for that. And that's what I meant to address.
And just to kind of clarify what you just said, you said there was a change in methodology. There wasn't a problem with communication. That was the problem with communication, that there was a change in methodology that was not communicated. So inherently, there was a problem, and that was the problem.
And we fixed it.
And I'm glad that it appears to be fixed.
Yes.
But just to know, I mean,
Things happen, and
just like Commissioner Pettis just said, I mean, it left a tangible effect on several entities, and so it's important to recognize that. Yeah.
And I think some of these items can also be addressed during her upcoming evaluation.
Absolutely.
I have a question. How often is she evaluated?
once a year.
And when is that? What month?
It's in the first of the year.
First of the year. You know, as a new board member, I personally would like to. I don't feel comfortable voting on such. I mean, $175,000 on a new contract. I'm new to this. I'm very brand new. I like to get the training. I like to get acclimated with the culture and, you know, pick some people's brains and see how you know, everything's going. And so I don't feel comfortable voting on something like this tonight.
And if I may, board members, the new board members, I would not have brought you to this as new members, but the board back in February told me at that time, when they did the evaluation, we set the salary. The salary that's in this contract is the one that was set back in February with the evaluation. They told me to bring it back at the end of the year. We don't meet in December, FYI, we don't meet in December. So they said to bring it back at the end of the year to renew it as we go into 2020. I did not do this to try to put anybody uncomfortable or to put anybody on the spot. I try to do what the board asked me to do. So
I would second that
wanna,
too. It just happened to be this way with members moving and whatnot.
Right.
That was not
Yeah, we didn't know. Yeah.
I was going to stand in the gap for Miss Kilgore. This was not
That's
like
a
some
fluke that it came
slight
out.
of the eye. Let me slip this in
Trying
here
to pull a fast one on
and see if we can get these new guys in there. No. This was a board approved, board asked for, board directive, that this is what would happen. And she caused this to happen. So please, don't let that reflect in any, there was no underhanded chicanery going
I'd like
on
to make
here.
the motion that we extend the director's contract through March, through a 90-day contract then.
Seconded.
Motion made by Mr. Avalos. By Mr. Avalos and seconded by Mr. Garcia to extend the contract through,
We want to do a 90-day contract because it expires December 31st. And we vote on it. We vote on it in January. Well, I guess you guys let us know here. I'm hearing that we vote on this in January, but we want to be.
90-day gives plenty of buffer.
That way, if you have a question right. That way, if there's a question in January and you want to reschedule it for February, with a 90-day, that gives the board an opportunity to reschedule it for February or March.
90-day.
And I would say that go ahead, even though we're doing the training, go ahead and put something for January. I have no problem being in a long meeting to make sure that it's taken care of.
Everything gets taken care of.
Okay.
We'll do that.
So 90 days does not mean we're not going to vote at the end of 90 days.
And your second, Mr. Garcia, will amend to that.
Restate the motion.
The motion will be that Ms. Kilgore's contract will be extended only through March. She had asked for a 3-year extension. The board said they would like it extended only, or we've got a motion on the floor, I'm sorry. There's a motion on the floor to extend it for 3 months and a second made to do the same so that the new board members can familiarize themselves with the process
Okay.
more clearly. Does that?
I got a lot of questions on that. 3 months. To evaluate.
It's not 3 months to
We're just offering
evaluate.
3 months to make sure that we're more than covered, so we don't go without a
Well,
chief appraiser.
in
and
order
that
to
there's
make a
security
contract,
that-
there's got to be some sort of evaluation that occurred to cause the language of the contract to be fitting. 3 months is not enough time, I don't think.
Remember, we evaluated her last year,
Yeah.
This year,
and I'm sorry, this year, but it was back in February.
February.
Yeah.
In February, we gave her her evaluation.
I have one
And-
more question. In January, we would possibly be looking at this. So if we vote for something in January, we're going to be looking at this exact same contract.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Except for the wording will be,
Correct.
if I'm the 6,000 and changed to 10 and the other one changed to.
Fine.
So what this is when we evaluated her, the board agreed that her contract would be brought back at this meeting,
Yeah.
which it is. But unbeknownst to, I guess, all of us with no forethought, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4
New members.
new members who do not really understand what the contract.
I don't even, it's not that they don't understand.
Well,
it's that
they're
the
not
public perception of having a vote
familiar.
is the biggest thing that you do
Okay,
on a
but
board the
do
very
you
first
think
time
from
within
now
20 minutes of sitting down at your first meeting. It's
through
not,
March
Due diligence.
or
it's,
to
it's
March
good to give it a little
is
time.
sufficient
So
enough
there's
time
a decision that's
Right.
made that the public
for
will be
them to
100%
understand
confident.
And that's why
going
I
on?
already talked to
Well,
the attorney to come in here
what's
in
been
January
brought up
so
is
that we
that
get the
we'll
training
have a
done right
training
away.
in
We
January.
should get them as soon as we
And
can.
at that training, they'll
Waiting
get to
see,
know
'cause we
their,
still have two
their
board members that
parts
have not been
better.
appointed for
And then they'll have an
2020.
additional meeting to
That'll
maybe
be
get
the
to
end
know
of
Ms.
December, so that's
Kilgore a
why we
little better,
Didn't do the
and
training
then
now.
take it
We
this.
still have two board members that could be appointed or not appointed.
That's the
Yeah,
motion.
You can always vote against it.
Now let him
Well,
talk,
hold it.
let
Yeah,
him
no,
talk.
I'm just saying.
To
I mean,
draft the
it's not-
contract, it's got to be about something. And there's a lot of somethings in the contract. So I'm asking, do you honestly believe that from today to March, we will have all of that substance that should be in the contract, an adequate contract, reviewed enough to evaluate to make certain that we have a proper contract that covers everything that needs to be covered so that the end result of adhering to what the contract says gives us the quality that we want.
By extending the contract so that there is more than enough security for Ms. Kilgore and also for the appraisal district to have a chief appraiser, and allowing enough time to where the public perception of 4 new members that have yet to go through training on the board that they're on, I don't doubt that you all could make an educated decision right now. That's not the point. The public perception of having yet to even go through board training and making the single largest decision that you make on that board in your 2 years, some people probably don't even make it once because it's been 3 years. So that perception would probably not be ideal. So in my opinion, 3 months is more than enough to carry through March, so we're covered, everything's fine, and we can have a vote hopefully in January following training so that at least every member that voted has been trained on what their job is on this board. And so to me, it makes perfect sense. And
I have no problem as long as we're covered, because there's things that a chief appraiser has to sign. Like you
absolutely.
guys know that with school superintendents and what have you, there are things that have to be signed, and you have to have a chief appraiser that has the training. So if we do that, the extension, so that the district is covered and it won't be in any liability, that's fine. Give you guys plenty of time to have training. I'm going to bring the same contract to you. You've seen it. You know, we'll give you a fresh one with some of the changes that we discussed today, and then we'll put it on the agenda.
So for clarification, and I just asked Commissioner Pettis, and I think he gave me what just for clarification in your motion, the contract extends through March, but we're going to talk about this again in January.
Yes.
We're being
Or
conservative
Or
to make sure
February.
that if we all get hit by a bus walking out of here,
Yes,
and
God
there's some
willing.
time to get reappointed, then you're still good.
Right, and we do have a couple of board members that have not been reappointed yet. They have until
I think that
end of December, so I mean,
it's
it
just a
could
good
change
faith
again.
gesture to make sure that we're fine no matter what. So
Yeah. And Mr. Pettis is correct, Commissioner Pettis is correct. This board is kind of a revolving door, and we've been really lucky to have a pretty stable board the last couple of years. But there have been years, and Commissioner Pettis and Ms. Searles have been here, where we have new people every other month. So I have no issue at all with everybody being more comfortable with the training that they have.
And I think that there needs to be, Mr. Trimble, when you say perception, you're very correct. Perception many times is reality. And so there needs to be no perception whatsoever that the reason that the board has extended this is for some mishap. The reason the board has extended it is so there is not a perception of manipulation and
the extension is exclusively to make sure that everyone has been trained in their role before they make the biggest decision
Exactly.
they have in that
Okay.
role. That's it.
and so that there's no
question that you were unqualified to make a decision.
But exactly. But as perceptions can happen, and news, news doesn't like good news. They like bad news. They like the juicy stuff. So that doesn't happen. That there's no dark cloud over Miss Kilgore because she had an excellent evaluation.
Absolutely.
It was almost a
Doesn't change that
perfect
whatsoever.
evaluation.
Simply being a responsible
Yes.
board.
But just wanting, I guess whoever's watching at home on the camera tonight, to know that this is not about Mrs. Kilgore. This is about an educational comfort board issue, because we have 4 board members that
Never
are
liked taking my finals the first day of school.
new. Okay. I kind of did. That meant you didn't have to go back to class.
As voting to hire a new superintendent or existing superintendent the moment we were elected. So it'd be irresponsible to do that.
So, okay, we have a motion. Do you understand, Mr. Taylor?
I understand fully,
Okay.
but I am always on the avenue for not setting up someone for failure. And so I'll go along with the program, but I do still have some thought about that idea that if we set it up where there's no possibilities of having a perception arise that failure can occur after the fact.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yes, sir.
That all participants fully understand that this is for success. Okay?
And I think that,
That's my concern.
yes, sir. And I think that new board members and old board members understand that.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
And then also just as a notation, I mean, if it is the intent of the board to line up the contract with the terms of the board members, that would also probably require us to amend the dates of the contract, the effectiveness and
Sure.
just as well, no, but in March or February or whenever that is.
Right, we can,
Okay.
in fact, I'll send you a new one, and I'll put that amended date as of April 1st, of 2020 to whatever, or leave it blank, we can fill it in, at the time.
Okay.
We can definitely do that.
So, motion on the floor from Mr. Avalos, second from Mr. Garcia to extend the contract through, for 90 days? For 90 days?
That's correct.
90 days takes it, I think, actually to March 30th, and there's 31 days in March. You want to
Say-
just
I would
say
just
till
say
March
till March
31st?
Till March the 31st,
Yeah.
2020.
I have calendars now.
Okay. I didn't get one. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Board. That would take us to our taxpayer liaison report. Ms. Carter, good evening.
Good evening, Board of Directors, and welcome to the new Board of Directors. The Judge, Linda Chu, she appointed 20 members to the Appraisal Review Board. 10 of them were ARB members that were going for reappointment. The other 10 of them were new members. And also on November 12th, the ARB had a meeting for the new members that are just going to join us in January, had a meeting for them and training on the legislative updates, the changes that are happening for 2020. So they had their course on that. And then also Mr. Gary Brooks, one of the ARB members, did take the new ARB members around the building. They took them a tour of the building. They showed them these are exceptions, and the employees there told them what they do, their duties. Their duties to serve the property owners. So we went through the whole building. So it was very informative to them, and it was excellent, the little training that they got. And also, Judge Linda Chu did appoint Mr. Michael Briggs as chairman of the Appraisal Review Board and Mr. Fred Munoz as secretary. And she also wants to be proactive for the next year. So she wants Mrs. Sylvia Calderon to start training as an officer of the Appraisal Review Board for others, also to start training as an officer for the Appraisal Review Board. And do y'all have any questions?
Did she take the time to interview each one? Because I know
Yes,
that
she did.
candidate
There
was
was
very good.
32. There
Okay.
was 32 applicants.
Well, I appreciate that she did that because that's,
Yeah.
I know it's very time consuming.
And I will say, each judge, since this law went into effect, each judge that we've had that has done that has interviewed every single one of them.
Yes.
And the only reason I know is because Tracy has to set up the interviews, so we can't talk to her for several days because she's setting up. So yeah, each judge has done that. And if I may, for the new board members, legislation went in a couple of years back that the Appraisal Review Board members, these are the people that serve and listen to protests, they are chosen by the local administrative judge. I am not allowed to make any kind of comment about somebody. I'm not allowed to look at their resumes or have any input in that. The taxpayer liaison, that is the duties set by state legislature. That's the person who deals with the judge and with the Appraisal Review Board members. The only thing that the appraisal district can be part of is, do you have enough pencils? Is the room warm enough? What do you want us to do on scheduling? You know, tell us how you want to schedule. We do all the computer stuff, get all the scheduling done and the letters mailed, but we're not allowed to get in that process whatsoever on the selection. So I just wanted Mr. Avalos, you had mentioned you'd been here before, and that there may be some changes that had happened since you'd been here last, that it is the local administrative judge that appoints. Now, the board of directors used to be able to appoint the chair and the secretary for the Appraisal Review Board. That just changed this year. So now the local administrative judge also has to appoint the chairman and the secretary for the Appraisal Review Board. We're not allowed to give any training. We recommend they have their own attorney. They're not allowed to use the attorney that the board of directors uses. It has to be an attorney that deals with Appraisal Review Board issues. And so we have to pay for it out of our budget, of course. They get a per diem of $150 a day, and they get $200 if they are the chair or the secretary per day. But we encourage them to have their attorney come in and train them. And so, like Ms. Carter said, the attorney just came in and did a training. We never discourage them from doing that. We will pay for that because we want our Appraisal Review Board members to be comfortable and to be trained, especially we can't get into that. So just FYI for the new members. That'll be some of the extended training in January when the lawyer comes in. We'll go through that. But as I hear things, I want to bring it to your attention, if that's all right with the new members.
And in case if members aren't aware, the local administrative, it's actually the local administrative district judge is the judge who is elected by the Council of Judges. And so we have 17 district judges here in El Paso, and I don't know if it's on an annual basis or biannual basis. They vote on who to be the administrative judge. And then by statute, the administrative judge has additional duties such as this that are just sort of random.
I know, right?
Typically, when the administrative judge takes office, these are the random duties that
they don't like.
They're
What?
surprised that are on their
Yeah.
list.
And Commissioner Perez, I believe Judge Chu is our third judge
Yes.
that we've had since this process went into place. And they are like, I have to do what?
Yes, Mr. Khalil even got interviewed by the judge.
Oh, my God.
By the judge.
And I guess the logic is just to kind of treat the ARB sort of like a jury.
Like a jury, yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? No, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Okay, that would take us to the reports on the settled lawsuits, item number 6.
Board members, especially for the new board members, I'm going to let Mr. Molina go over these. What happens is we have so many lawsuits that we sit down and we do deliberations and mediations and we visit with them. We try to come up with some settlements. The board had asked if they could not see, once we do a final settlement, to be able to see which accounts those were and who are the owners, what have you. There's no action on it. It's just informational purposes. And because they are settled, we do not have to have this in executive session. The board has given us direction as how they want to see the spreadsheet and the information that they want. And Commissioner Pettis, thank you very much. He always finds something else he wants to expand on. And so I think we've got it pretty large now with a lot of information for the board members to see. The only time that we'll be dealing with a existing lawsuit that is not settled, we will do that in executive session so that you have the opportunity to discuss it with the lawyer and with the staff as to where we are. We'll probably have something like that in January on the agenda. But for today, we don't have any of those, but we do have settled, and so you have, and we are sending this now as backup. You should have all received it with your packet. So that at any time, if you receive something, please feel free to call us. We'll be happy to address your questions, whether it's on the financial report, on the health report, on the litigation report. You don't have to wait till a board meeting. If you have a question, please feel free to give us a call, and we'll be happy to address it. So I'm going to turn it over. Mr. Molina, for those of you who haven't met him, is our Director of Litigation and Arbitration and Appeals. So I'll let him go over this.
Yes, good evening. I am the Director of Litigation, but I'm not an attorney, so,
That's the attorney.
and also, I'm not the colonel, so. Can I borrow this? I didn't get that one.
Oh, okay, sure.
What the board had asked for in the past is that they wanted to see how much we were spending on attorney's fees when we settled these accounts. And if you look at that last column S on your spreadsheet, it'll state up, the dark line that's in between these columns is different lawsuits. So there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 suits that were settled this past month. The first one, the Upper Valley Inc., LLC, is basically a storage warehouse that was built in 2016. If you notice under, what is it? Column H, that was last year's value. We sent out a notice, which is column J, and then the final lawsuit was settled. The final value that was settled was in column M. So last year, on the first row, last year's value was 0. We had noticed them at 776,443. Then when during our process of trying to settle these, we found out that the building was partially completed, so it wasn't complete. So we had to make adjustments because of that. And then there's also, we had a large part of the building as office area. We found out that it was actually storage. So these are the adjustments that we had to make, and this is where we came up with the settled value. So if you notice, I mean, our value is higher than what it was on previous value, except for 17, where we lost like $200,000 in valuation. The second group, which is from 3 to 24, this is tracts of land that are in Horizon area, Horizon Boulevard and Ascension, that area. And previous year, we've been valuing these properties as raw land. We discovered that they have access to water. So, and then there was apparently some of these lots were being sold for a large amount of money. So we placed these lots at market value, what we thought was market value. Then we found out that they're being sold at a real high interest rate, and the reason, I mean, there's a lot of repossessions. So the owner is selling them, and then repossesses them after the people can't make payments and stuff. So that's why we ended up making adjustments on the value. Again, if you look at column H, we basically ended up with about 3 times as higher value for this year than what they were last year. The number 25, that's a personal property account. What it is it's a trucking company, and they failed to file for allocation. Allocation is their trucks are taxed based on the miles that they travel within the county. And so they failed to apply for this allocation adjustment. And so they filed lawsuit against us so that we could apply the allocation to it. So in order to settle it, that's what we had to do. So if you see the difference, again, in H to M, we still increased the value, but we were able to adjust it based on the mileage that the trucks travel within the county. The Hunt Community Properties, this is property that's on East Lake, and we had them as previously there were raw land, and we had also tried to appraise the appraisal district appraised these as at market value, what was thought to be market value. And after information was brought in by the owners, we were able to make an adjustment to come up with a settled value. And again, if you look between H and M, the value has increased from last year to this year.
One thing to let the new board members know is property owners file their protest, and they come in, and even though the law doesn't state we try to do an informal hearing so they can bring in their information. We're mass appraisal, so we look at values on a mass basis. So if they have individual issues that they can bring into us, if they'll bring them in, then we'll look at them and we'll make adjustments. Businesses historically bypass that and go right to the appraisal review board process. There's nothing in the law that requires them to bring evidence. So they can just come in and say, we disagree with the value. The ARB can uphold the CAD value or make an adjustment, and then the property owner can then accept it, or they can file a lawsuit. The only time that they're required that we can kind of enforce them bringing in information is during discovery once a lawsuit is filed. And once they bring in the facts, the appraisal district, we don't set value just to set high value. We need to set it based on the facts. And once they bring in the facts, then we have to make an adjustment because it's based on the data that they've brought in. Unfortunately, so many of them will not bring in that data until we get into the lawsuit process. So that's why you'll see a lot of these settlements because they do bring in the data at this time. The attorneys can go through discovery and get this information. So that's why you'll see changes that we handle in and not go all the way to court, because they bring in the data. If the data is correct, then we have to change it, have to make that adjustment. So unfortunately, there's nothing that requires them or enforces them to bring that information in. Appraisal district is required to give their information, but a property owner isn't. So this is when we get it, is during discovery. So you will see these, and what we're doing now is a monthly report. And if we have anything in December, it will be in, or when we don't have a meeting, it'll show up in the next report. So some reports may be a little bit bigger than others, because we'll make sure you have all that information. And if you ever have any questions or want to see something, we'll definitely
For,
give it to you.
for school board members, if you're interested in whether it affects your school district or not, column F basically will tell you which school district it's in.
And one of the things for school board members is the school financial departments and your CFOs, they can file with the comptroller's office to try to get back from the comptroller dollars that are lost, because your students are guaranteed an X amount of dollar per student. So any loss, unfortunately, cities and municipalities and counties can't do that, but school districts can. I think it's once a year, that they can file.
Well, usually what happens is you got most of the school districts in El Paso County contract with the Linebarger law firm to take care of their appeals for state funding. And what will happen is every year in September we'll report the school district values to the state. Then in years that we have a property value study, the comptroller will evaluate us, and then in March, the following March, then you have the opportunity to appeal the values if the comptroller makes any adverse decisions against the school district, or normally there's a lot of changes. The role is constantly changing all the time. So, and it's usually in a downward direction. So usually by March, you've lost some value anyway. So then Linebarger will file an appeal with the comptroller's office to say that your value was lower, because the funds you get from the state are based on how much property value taxes that you're getting per student. And all the school districts in El Paso County are considered low property value districts. So all the school districts in the county are getting state money on top of their property taxes. So the lower your property tax per student is, the more the state needs to kick in to bring you up to where you need to be. So Linebarger will file the appeal based on our data in March. Then the following October, you can do an audit, and they usually do another audit for anything that's happened between March and October. And then usually by that time, most of the turmoil in the role has pretty much settled down, and the only thing that's outstanding are the lawsuits. And then usually what they'll do is you're allowed to file one more audit at a future date. So once they feel that the majority of the high value lawsuits have been settled, then Linebarger will file another audit to try to get you more money from the state. But so basically,
But it takes a couple of years.
It usually takes a couple of years
for
it to finalize.
EPISD, Mr. Avalos, just to let you know, Mr. Taylor, I believe, is aware of. They do it themselves. They don't use Linebarger. Their staff does it themselves. But we work with Walt Byers and Ms. Carmen Arieta to get them the information that they need to be able to do that. And David is totally right. It's not just the lawsuits that decrease the value. It's your homesteads, your over 65 applications, your veterans, when they become 100%, they pay zero taxes. So there's a lot. It's not just value issues that can lower the certified value. It's all the other exemptions that come into play. So, okay, I'm just trying to a little training as we go along, as we think of these things, to try to bring you up to speed.
Are the other two appointees to this board from school boards?
Mr. Lowenfield and Mr. Trimble are from the city of El Paso.
Oh, no, I meant the other two that are outstanding.
Yes, they are from school boards.
Yeah.
Well, they're actually, the two that are outstanding are from the Lower Valley entities, all of the Lower Valleys. The way it's broken down, and it was set up this way at the inception of the appraisal district, We are what they call three-quarter rule because El Paso is so large. If we went by revenue, it would only be the city and the county that would be on the board, or the city and the school district, I guess it would be El Paso School District. So when most large appraisal districts went with what they call three-quarter rule, so we have 4 entities that are represented by the Upper Valley. It's Town of Vinton, Anthony ISD, Canutillo ISD, and
Benton.
Town of Anthony, and Ms. Searles represents them. The City of El Paso receives 2 on our board, which is Mr. Trimble and Mr. Lowenfield. The county receives 1, which is Commissioner Pettis. Esleta receives 1, which is Ms. Lucero. And then everybody else is under the Lower Valley, and they receive 2. So your Tornillo ISD, San Eli ISD, the town of San Eli, all of those are represented by the 2 representatives from the Lower Valley. And right now, that's Mr. Mena and Mr. Garcia. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
One thing just good to look at here too is, you know, if you start looking towards the end of it, which we got all the way up to S, so that without having to go legal, so this is great.
I know, right?
Thanks to Commissioner Pettis.
Yeah.
I know.
I think we could fit a couple more. But you know, you look at Q column, the tax revenue differential, or the difference, and you see this big negative number at the bottom. But when you compare column I, which is previous year total tax, with column P, total tax, you'll see, you know,
Actually,
that's not an actual loss there. So I'm just pointing that out because
No, thank
it's
you.
important to kind of look at that,
Yeah.
so that you're seeing the actual year over year versus hypothetical loss.
But,
Thank
but,
you, Mr. Trimble, yeah.
but Q, like for example, that number at the bottom, the negative 112, that's essentially money that we didn't collect.
Correct. That we thought we were going to collect, but then we, you know,
Now,
we
is this
settled.
broken up by entity, or is this a total? The entity breakup is right here.
Well, the bottom part is
The bottom part is a total, right? So remember that that 122 never didn't come just from you. It came from the
Cumulative.
5 entities that are in there, right?
But when
Based
you
on
look
your
at I
rate.
over, you know, I over P, when you're looking at year over year, it makes it a lot less, a lot easier to swallow, and it's not, you know.
So a lot of times you'll look at that and you'll go, oh my gosh, but then remember there's like 5 different entities that total is split up into. Yeah. I hope we were able to answer some of the questions of the new board members and try to get them at least a little bit of a beginning concept of what we do here.
Okay. Everybody ready to move forward? Yes? That would take us to agenda item number 7, the chief appraiser report. Ms. Gilmore?
Okay, number 1, reminder, no December meeting. For the new board members, historically, we don't have a meeting in July because we are trying to certify those numbers for the taxing entities because they're working on their budgets. So we don't have one in July. And then in December, because it's very hard to get a quorum and so many of the board members are on other boards and they're trying to finish up their year, we don't have a December meeting. So the next one will be January 16th. We always meet the 3rd Thursday. Unless there's been an issue and the chairperson and the secretary or the co-chair sit down and we have to come up with a different date, either because of weather or lack of quorum, what have you. And every one of you have a new 2020 calendar. We left that with you. We'll wait till January and we'll get you the updated, for your notebook that you have, the updated board members information, so that all of you have numbers, so that if you need to call and talk to somebody. Again, we're going to have training. I did talk to Mr. Longoria, and he's put it on his calendar for the 16th to do the training for the board members. He is the board attorney. Ms. Carmen Hegeman is another one of your attorneys, so they'll be in here. I would like to remind the new board members, when we send out an email, if there is any kind of discussion, it will go to you individually, because we have to be very cautious on the quorum. So when you get an email from us that says our meeting is XYZ, that goes out to everybody as a whole. But if you have any question or any issue, if you will send that just to one, just respond back to admin or to Ms. Searles, because we want to be real cautious with the quorum. So if there is something that we are sending you in the way of documents that you've asked for a follow-up, we'll send it to you individually. We have to be real cautious. Is somebody making just a very, very I believe Commissioner Pettis brought this to attention about a year or two ago. Somebody making just a standard comment, it could be related by our wonderful media as a quorum. So that is something that we watch for, just a reminder for that. We are going on. We are in the field working for 2020. We've been giving several classes for the new board members. Our appraisers must have classes and be recertified every 2 years. Once they get their registered professional appraisal, we do classes in-house. I have several staff that have been trained and certified to be by the comptroller's office to teach those classes. So we are giving classes. We had a USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practices, update today, and we had 4 people from Brewster County that came in. So we do open these up to the different taxing entities locally and to Brewster, to Hudspeth, so that they can come here and not have to go to Austin. So that's going on. I'm sure I'll let you know in January, but in case I forget, I just signed a contract with the city of El Paso. We are extending, for those of you that have been here, you know in January, we have the mobile unit so that property owners can come and pay their taxes here the last 3 days of January, because the city no longer has a facility where they can put a mobile unit. Well, I've allowed and we've agreed to do a whole week. So we'll have a mobile unit here from January 27th to the 31st. It's become very popular with the citizens. They don't have to go downtown. They don't have to worry about parking. We have a very big parking lot, and they can park here. And because we've been doing it, board members, I think, the last 4 years, and every year we've had more people that have come and a higher dollar amount. So they handle everything. We don't handle anything. We do open our building so that people can come in and use the building. We also, last year, changed it where our liaison officer, if they forget their bill, because the mobile unit will not take a payment without a bill, and so they were having to leave and come back. So we have a customer service area down in our first floor in our deeds and exemptions department. We have 3 computers there, and our liaison officer will not get on the computer and do it for them, but will help walk them through the process so they can get on the computer and they can print their bill, and we are not charging them. This is a service that we're giving to the public, so then they can go right back out and pay their tax bill. The reason we don't have the liaison officer or one of our employees sit down and put the information in is if we slip up and transpose a number and they pay on that and they're not paying on their account and it goes delinquent, they're going to say it was our fault. So we totally stay away from that. The tax office does not have staff to bring here to assist them, so our liaison officer will sit them down and walk them through how to get in and so that they can print. So that is something I wanted to let the new board members know. And of course, as another reminder, IAAO board member, thank you very much for your support. They pay, that will be 5 meetings a year. They pay for all of that. It will not come out of our budget. It is something that they pay for the board members. So I'll be dealing with international issues and assessments in education, trying to expand. We have members from Korea, from Japan, from Australia. The region I'll be representing goes all the way from us north to Japan, Indonesia. We have members from Africa. We have members from, like I said, internationally. So I'm very excited, and I will bring a report, part of my director's report. I will include what we're doing in that. Whether you're interested or not, I'll bring that to y'all, let you know. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, congratulations, Ms. Kilgore. That's quite an honor for our whole county, really, to have that kind of representation.
It's a first.
A total first. So thank you, and thanks for stepping up to the bat. It's always hard to get elected. I don't care what. Yeah.
I have nothing else. If anybody has any questions for me, we're done.
Any questions of the board for Ms. Kilgore?
There was something that we, like, probably over a year ago, where we had partnered up with, I guess, was it the county, with the sheriff's department, with
For the cars.
and all that, and we hadn't really discussed it since then, and I was just curious.
Could
if
you
maybe-
give us, it was where
where they
the
could
county,
enforce and
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, we are getting a monthly check.
Great.
That is, with the county enforcement, with the county tax office. They have an enforcement bureau. And used cars, Mr. Lonefield knows about this. Car dealers must do a monthly report. And every month, if they came, yeah, I'm sure he has staff that handles that.
Stays up all night.
I
like
worry
3 or
about
4
that.
times a
Yeah.
month.
And so what we did is we did go in with a contract with them so that now, because we don't have enforcement capability, it's not something that we're allowed to do. It's not in the tax code, and we just don't have that. So they do. So we came in with a contract with them where we get a percentage of whatever they collect on these folks that are not paying their monthly payment to the county. We get the report, and the county gets the check. So now we get a check, and yes, we've been receiving checks. They haven't been real big, a couple $100 here and there, but we are getting those monthly checks from the county enforcement. So, and it goes into general fund, so as part of revenue. We also get, if somebody fails to render, there's a penalty on that. We get a small portion of that. That all goes into, it kind of goes in with our revenues. If you see a section in the budget that talks about interest and other income, it's all part of that. It's not a lot, but it is reinforcing it, and we are getting something. So it's worked out very well with the county.
Great. I don't know what made me think of that earlier today. But
Ms. Lucero, do you have a questioning look? Do you want more information?
When after
No.
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 Yeah.
yeah,
No.
dealerships that we're avoiding, we don't have an enforcement arm of any kind, and now we partnered up and we have a way
Right.
to collect at least something.
It's dealerships that are not filing the reports that they're supposed to be filing, and so there's penalties on them, and then there's the amount that they're supposed to be paying, so there's a penalty. So the county has their enforcement, and they deal with the car dealers, new and used, on several different issues. So this is all part of that. And we just give them the information because they're supposed to file with us, so we just give them the information, then they take it from there.
And then we reap a little benefit
Yeah.
out of it. So it's our first year, I believe, of doing this,
Mhm.
and it's a lucrative. If you want more information, I'm sure just call Ms. Gill.
Yeah, we can always give you how much we've gotten over the year. We can add that to the next financials. The reason we didn't have financials this time is because we are in our audit.
Okay.
We have, for those of you that are new, we have an outside independent auditor that audits the appraisal district every year. And so they're in the process of the audit right now. We'll have that report for you. Probably wait till February to do that report. So if you have a lot of questions, and we want to get it to you early as backup, so you have plenty of time to look at it. So we'll probably have that in February, since we're going to do the training in January. I think we did it in February this year, and we were able to get the reports to you early so that you
They
could
were
review
very
them.
early.
So we're going to do that again in 2020. That's it.
I think, are,
Yes, sir.
are all of us contacted for that guy? I know I got an email from the auditor.
They only contact certain board members, different board members every year. And if you're a new one, if you have any questions whatsoever, Rosa Goldman is our CFO, and she'll be happy to walk you through it. You can give us a call, she'll walk you through it, or you can come down and she'll walk you through. They do different ones every year. Did you get one, Commissioner Pettis?
I did get one.
We'll be happy to. Yeah. I know.
Okay.
They pick different board members every year, and a couple one. They pick different staff from my office, even staff that have nothing to do with the finances. They will pick different staff and send them a similar form. It's a little bit different than what y'all get, but a similar form, because they want to see what their responses are as to what we have them in job level.
I got one too. So the new board members essentially receive that.
Okay. Yeah, they don't know if you're new or if you've been here forever. They just pick a board member and send it to you. So, again, if you have any issues or any questions, please, Ms. Goldman can help you.
Thank you, Ms. Kilgore. And no other questions? Ready to move on? Okay. That would take us to agenda item number 8. Are we going to executive session, Ms. Kilgore?
No, ma'am, there's nothing for executive session.
And with nothing in executive session, that would take us to number 9, so we don't have anything to discuss out of executive session. So guess what, gang? It is now 6:35 on the dot, and without further, everybody okay? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
No, I want to stay here till 10.
You'll get the chance at some point.
You will. There will be, when we do our budget workshop.